Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this band
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. Well, we're here to spoil Deadpool and Wolverine. It's Ben alluded to it last week. We're going to be doing like a new movie. I feel like the last few movies we did that were new, we still kind of had like a week lag. It's partly because of the strike and not wanting to do it right on the weekend of, and sometimes just timing wise. So this is I can't remember the last time we've done it like fresh off of just watching it and getting it out there right away. So that'll be fun.
This is gonna be very fun. It's aside from the movie itself being fun, it's just the idea of not having all the information, not being able to do our rewatches and all that kind of stuff. It is like first reaction kind of content, and I'm really a big fan of that.
So yeah, if anyone hasn't watched the movie, the general idea of Deadpool and Wolverine is that a rogue TVA agent is trying to get Deadpool out of the way by being like, hey, you should just join the sacred timeline and get out of your timeline, which will it's gonna get killed off because your Wolverine died, which is the Wolverine we as an audience have been watching since 2000.
The Logan, the full Logan one.
So yeah, then basically the movie starts in earnest from there, which is Deadpool thinking I'll just replace the Wolverine, and then getting pruned by the rogue TVA agent and going to the void and trying to fight his way back so that he can save his world, and he promises Wolverine, the Wolverine that he does take, which is basically the worst Wolverine, that he can change things for that Wolverine so that people don't see him as a loser and a fuck up. That's the general idea of the movie.
Yeah,
that's what's going on here.
Yeah, not overly complicated, but none of the Deadpool movies have ever been overly complicated. They've been very, very straightforward, and I appreciate that they didn't try to really do the things that we thought that they might have done. Like, like there were rumors before it was released that they might insert him actually into like the Avengers and all that kind of stuff.
I'm glad that didn't happen.
I'm very glad that didn't happen, because I was like, the more I hear about those rumors, I'm like, the less this is sounding like a Deadpool movie, which is, in all fairness, because it's in the MCU now, it's got to join that narrative. But to me, I'm like, this, at the end of the day, to me, still should feel like a Deadpool movie, and it still very much does that, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah. So I might be alone here. It doesn't sound like I am, but I might be alone here. I just liked the movie. I thought it was very fun. I understand what people don't like about it, though. I think there's there's the people that are committed to being like, it's MCU, so I hate it. So
yeah, that's just they're biased to begin with. Whatever.
Like I saw some critic complaining about the movie and how it made him lose hope for cinema, and people were like, why did you even watch it? And he's like, it was for work. And I'm like,
jeez,
buddy, like when I complain about work, it's because someone was like racist to me and made me feel less than. Like, your complaint is you had to watch a movie. I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah, that's not that's just, wow,
like, come
privilege on display right there.
Yeah, buddy, come on. Like, and again, I'm not saying he has to like it, and I will explain why I think it is on paper a bad movie, but I still enjoyed the movie. I had a good time with it.
There's a hot take.
Yeah. I think what is bad about the movie, undeniably, is that whole rogue TVA agent gambit of an anchor being died in your thing. So this is, your world's gonna die, and we're gonna send you somewhere else. But then the movie kind of lands on, actually, it was this time ripper thing that was going on, and that's what saved everything. Because, spoilers, that's the name of the show, B-15 shows up and he's like, hey, Deadpool, don't worry, like, your universe is gonna be fine because you killed the Time Ripper machine. And it's like, so not the anchor being thing. And also, it seems like you're saying it's okay for this Wolverine and apparently X-23 to stick around in this, which we got the sense from Doctor Strange that that would cause an incursion and ruin everything. So it's just
Mm,
like it's all these things that are breaking its own rules within the movie and rules we've already set up.
mhm.
And I'm saying that I don't care. I was just like, you know what? Like I felt like I understood what the real reason for this movie to happen was. And yeah, they shot themselves in the foot with that weird setup at the beginning, but it was also that it could get into this idea of people wanting to matter and feeling like the world is leaving them behind
Mhm.
and needing to feel like they matter. And I felt like they picked the right two villains for that to be a thing, and they
Yep.
picked. Uh, I don't even call them cameos. They picked the right characters to explore that with on a meta level, but also
Yep.
very interestingly in the actual movie with
Yeah.
Deadpool and Wolverine, but and obviously we'll get to all the surprises.
Mhm.
But I think kind of like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, the specificity of what they were trying to explore and what that allowed them to put on display was more entertaining to me than being like, oh yeah, they messed up on this setup.
Yeah, I think I never once thought about the rules of the multiverse of madness and what it established and all that kind of stuff, which is very, very interesting. That seems like a huge issue. And maybe they just might be like, this is their way of being kind of like, yeah, we're abandoning that. We're just kind of getting rid of that.
Which they say
It's
in the movie, like, hey, can we
the
get rid of this stuff?
yeah, they like, obviously this movie is very, very meta along
Mm-hmm.
with its jokes. I think the fact that this movie, more than Deadpool 1 and 2, is trying to be meta is the thing that's going to date it to this time. You know what I mean? It's going to be the one that has the least rewatchability to me, except for the action scenes, because the action scenes do deliver quite well. But at the end of the day, I always think about this because I'm watching other properties that I don't want to talk about right now because I think it's just like, oh, that's opening up a can of worms. But if the action is the only good part about it, then really is that a saving grace, or is that something that you're just going to forget? Like, is it a good movie? And I don't think this movie is as strong as other people say it is. I think it's just more in line with what they want. You know what I mean? As like, oh, like I hear a lot of people being like, MCU's back. I'm like, is it though? Or did you just get what you wanted, which is two white male leads?
No,
You know what I mean?
they got a bunch of people to show up in a movie for
Yep,
longer, which again, that's why I keep refraining from saying cameos. I don't think there are that many cameos in
I agree.
to the extent that when someone shows up, they're there for a reason and they like you play out their character arc.
Yes.
There's it isn't like I would say a cameo which they put in the trailer would be like Sabretooth showing up and then getting his head chopped off to pay off
Yep.
a promise that was made in X-Men Origins. Like
Mhm.
that to me is a cameo, but I know it seems like I'm being cagey, but I feel like we'll just go through them one by one later. But like
Yep.
when someone shows up that wasn't promoted as being in the movie, you're like, oh, but this is like a real character. This is a real
Mhm.
scene happening right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, obviously, mileage may vary. I don't think that it's more meta than the other movies at all. I
Okay.
think it is. It's a Deadpool movie. Like that is
Sure.
Deadpool. He
Mhm.
is of the time. So
Mhm.
each one of those movies, you can make that claim about. That all of the references are about topical things because that was the only thing that would make sense.
Right.
Whereas the meta here that I like is paying off stuff that we've been talking about in the news and stuff. So it doesn't
Yes.
feel timely. It just feels like
Mhm.
a catharsis, which is in line with what this movie is about, which is
True.
giving people a payoff to things that never were or didn't get a fair shake.
Mhm. Mhm.
So to me, in that point, the meta-ness actually is important in this movie more so than other movies.
Right.
Um,
It's
I
true because you know, with the things you're talking about, and I like that you brought this up right off the top. I don't consider a lot of these people cameos. Are some of these cameos actually cameos? Yes. Like Lady Deathstrike is definitely a cameo in the
yeah,
sense where
it's
she
just yeah,
doesn't
you're
get
just
any
like okay, I guess she's
lines.
just there. Yeah,
Yeah, and Azazel, or however you pronounce that, is there to be like, yeah, I remember you. You look cool and all that, but doesn't actually like do anything to the plot, but like Pyro does.
Yeah.
You have Juggernaut that's delivering something to the lie, everything and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. The different levels of cameos here are actually consequential to the actual plot itself.
Hmm.
So I think that's really, really good, that a lot of these people get that payoff and get to actually say goodbye to those franchises. And I think the way they do it towards the end is one of the funniest things in the world as a millennial, because I'm sure you had that experience with like your graduations and all that kind of stuff where you had either Vitamin C's graduation song
Oh,
or
you're talking
like
about like the
yeah.
mid credits like roll of.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even see that as funny. I was just like, oh wow, like what a cool way to say goodbye and like actually see where we started from and like tracking things.
Yeah.
I thought that was
No,
just.
I
I
didn't
thought that
I
was
didn't think it
touching.
was fun. I thought it was touching too. I
Yeah.
just thought the song choice as a millennial is funny because I'm like, it does have that feeling of like, yeah, saying goodbye to your graduating class and all that kind of stuff, right?
Hmm.
It and just the idea of like time of your life playing there. I'm like, that's
Oh,
great.
good
That's a
riddance.
nice,
Yeah.
that's yeah, good riddance time of your life. I'm like, not the actual stuff. The stuff there was heartwarming, is really, really good, well curated. I loved it.
Hmm.
But it was the song choice, and I'm like, this does have the feeling of a
The
graduation kind of
I think
thing.
the other thing, some of it worked for me was I'm like, yeah, some of the song choices I didn't really get, but I think that's a function of the James Gunn effect because I feel like if we didn't have the
Mm,
I feel like if we didn't have the Guardians movies that were like, oh no, it's important because this means something to the character, then the needle drops wouldn't have come off as kind of wobbly to me. But I was kind of like, why this song? But then I was like, but in any like, if we didn't have the context of those three movies, you would have just been like, yeah, okay, whatever. We're
yeah.
having fun here. Like when Bring 'Em Out comes out, it's like, yeah, because it's like this call to arms. But I was kind of like, but does he like this song? Like it was
Yeah.
different than in Deadpool where like X Gonna Give It To You was part of the marketing and kind of felt like it was like X-Men related and stuff. But
Yeah. And the fact that he's Weapon X and all that, like
yeah,
it
but
had a
this
lot of thematical
but
overlap for
like
sure.
this I was just like honestly I just like what they're doing with the song.
I agree.
I don't care that it doesn't truly land for me like uh what do I want to say here? Um, Not emotionally, but the other kind. Sorry, my head's a bit cloudy these days.
That's okay.
But logically, it didn't really. Intellectually is what I want to say. Intellectually,
Mhm.
it didn't quite land, but emotionally, it did, and that's pretty much the movie for me. Like
Sure. Yeah.
emotionally, I had fun with it and enjoyed what I said. I thought they were exploring, which is
Mhm.
giving people this catharsis. Either people we can spoil one of the things like Gambit, who never got a shot, like giving him something to do. And
Yeah.
what I think the movie did smartly was not kill those characters off.
Hmm.
Because you could see it being like, oh, right, like this is their last stand. And they even say, like, yeah, this is how we die. This is fine. At least we get to go out doing something good.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
they didn't die. Like, you were like, oh shit, they're very capable, actually. Like,
Yeah.
specifically, I remember them giving Gambit some really cool moments in the
Oh
fight,
God.
in the
Yeah,
actual
the
fight. Yeah.
Gambit stuff, they went all out for that. That was just like
So to anyone who doesn't know, Channing Tatum as Gambit, because I did hear some people in the theater like, why Channing Tatum? But there
yeah.
was that big like Comic Con picture where like Channing Tatum was there because he was gonna do a Gambit movie,
Hmm.
and that's what I mean by the like meta-ness is that's a payoff. It doesn't feel that's not actually timely, but it is
Yes.
addressing things that needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
So that his joke was constantly like everyone else was like, yeah, people forgot about us, and he's kind of like, or never got a chance to see us, or
Hmm. Hmm.
like I mean, he was doing the funny Cajun thing, but there was also that underlying thing of, and I could have had a chance at this too. So like,
Hmm.
maybe give
Yeah.
me a shot.
Yeah, it's definitely like self-aware humor is what Deadpool brings to the table all the
Hmm.
time. And for him for other characters to get a crack at that self-aware humor was a lot of fun to me, right? Specifically the Gambit thing. I think that was really, really good. But also like the Wesley Snipes Blade thing, that was
Yeah,
like
we
really,
can talk
really
about that now.
funny
I was going to try
for
and go in
sure.
order, but yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Like it, I even forgot in the moment that the buzz was they don't like each other, and specifically,
Yes.
but then right after I saw the movie, I unmuted all of the things and I got to see the Comic-Con footage of
Mhm.
Ryan Reynolds introduce Wesley Snipes as my friend and have like he ran to Wesley to hug him,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh yeah, like there was again some catharsis there, some healing
Mhm.
that happened.
Yes.
Um, where I was like, I mean, they could have filmed this with them not in the same room, like they could have, but doesn't matter because clearly what they're showing you is they settled their differences. And
Yes.
on this podcast, I've been on record as saying I was on Wesley's side on that. Like that
Yeah.
wasn't I wasn't like, oh good, I'm glad Wesley calmed down and finally it's like no, you tried to steal his movie from him.
Yeah. No,
Not Ryan as
he.
an actor. Like, he didn't have that kind of power back then. But
No, it's the studio.
the studio, that specific writer
Mhm.
director, tried to take away
Correct.
that franchise from him. I
Yeah.
understand why he was upset, but
Yeah.
it was nice again to have this unfinished business of like let's do something together properly.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that yeah, that's what I meant by why I was kind of pushing back against the meta-ness and it not aging well. I think this is very much a thing that will age well as something that helped. Um, not helped. It's not. It's a movie. It's not, and it's a Deadpool movie. It's not helping anyone really,
Mhm.
other than giving them some form of joy for whatever time they're watching it. But it
Mhm.
is closing loops and giving catharsis to the actors at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There was some, and that's why when they had like the reveals of who was gonna be in this, like X-23, I forget her name, Daphne Keene,
Yeah.
in this, I was just like, when I saw that, a lot of people were pissed, in the trailer, and then
Mhm.
when I saw it, I was just like, what else have you got up your sleeve?
Yeah.
And they
Well, that's what they
delivered.
will. So, I mean, for me, the interesting. I'm just gonna say this before we just go one by one through the quote unquote cameos.
Yeah.
Uh, I knew who was gonna be in it. I didn't know how they would appear. I just had
Mhm.
a list of who was gonna be in it. There was only one cameo that didn't show up, and I was like, I didn't miss it. Which was everyone was so convinced Daniel Radcliffe was playing Patch, and then in the movie,
Right.
obviously, it's just Hugh Jackman. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because I would say yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I was like, and I didn't feel cheated. I was just like, I really was interested in how are they going to integrate these things,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how anyone would show up. But it was like anytime someone came, I'm like, okay, they were right about this one. Okay, they were, but as I said, my enjoyment came from like, oh, like they're using them for real.
Mhm.
Like they get to be a character and have important. Like, so like the first one is Happy Hogan, which I'd forgotten, but then I was like, oh right, I guess I knew he was gonna be it. But it's funny because much like the one right after it,
Mhm.
in this surprise appearance, I'm not sure realistically who he's playing because he's got the paraphernalia, but it's like I mean he could be talking to John Favreau who like did the first MCU movie. Like
Yep.
he could be, and also I forgot. And John Favreau was or not Happy Ho. He was who's Matt Murdock?
Matt
Foggy.
Murdock's buddy, Foggy,
He's
Foggy
Foggy
Nelson. Yeah.
Nelson. So like, there's a bunch of options here of like who he's talking to.
Mhm.
Um, turns out it was Happy Hogan. I'm still happy with it, but I thought it was really well done, and it
Yes.
lasts for long enough for you to get the point and what the movie is about, which is Deadpool thinking, surely like I can become an Avenger, and Happy being like, or not, like maybe you're not ready for this, and
Yeah.
setting in motion the idea that like Deadpool's like, oh, so I don't matter. Oh no, like
Mhm.
what do I got to do to matter? And the down like the tailspin he gets into from that, losing Vanessa and stuff like that. So I thought like that is an important, interesting first surprise appearance, which I guess kind of feels like a cameo, but it is a lengthy scene.
Mhm.
You're going through everything, and as I said, like the slow reveal, like oh no, it really is Happy Hogan that he's
Mhm.
talking to.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I really appreciated that one. But then after that was the Chris Evans, obviously trying to mislead you as Captain America. But I think my first thing was when he was like, "You dickhead," I was like, "So it's not Captain America?" And then I
It's
was like,
definitely not
"Oh," and I
Captain
was like, "Oh
America.
right, they
Yeah.
said he was gonna be." I just thought like, why would he do that? But it's like, oh no, he's really gonna be Johnny Storm, and it was great because it's like he's gonna say it, and I'm like, are they really gonna make him say I can do this all day. It doesn't even make sense. And then it's like, no, he's going to say flame on, which does make sense in this
Yeah.
situation. And then you get Pyro, who was in the commercial, so you get him to be like, I'm just going to suck you up. Like, this isn't going to work out for you.
Yeah,
I
like
was like, oh
you.
shit, okay. Like, very interesting. The only thing about this appearance, which pretty much is overarching throughout the whole thing,
Mhm.
is it's very clear that Chris Evans is using his Bostonian accent.
Yeah,
Like, you're supposed to be a New Yorker, but you're clearly not doing that right now.
yeah,
You're having
yeah,
fun, which I'm happy for you, but you're not doing the New York accent.
yeah. That was the cameo that surprised me the most. But the moment he showed up, I was like, "We're not dealing with the Captain America here. I know that." And
I just felt like
and
the belt was misleading because the belt does look like first generation
a
Captain
little
America.
bit, a
I was
little
like,
bit, yeah.
you wanted to tip the scales.
Yeah, they definitely did. Look, the moment I saw him wearing the poncho, I'm like, he's not Captain America.
Yeah.
They're hiding the four, like right away. And I'm like, this is great though, because like up until then, they're still playing it as close to Captain America as
Mhm.
those two characters overlap. And I thought that was so brilliant. And then for them to go flame on in Deadpool to be like, wait, what? It
Yeah.
really caught a lot of the people off guard in my
And then when he
theater.
falls and Wolverine's like, we don't know him.
Yeah, yeah, it's so good because it's true. Like none of them actually had overlap with any of the
Yeah.
Fantastic Four characters. So for him to actually say that is like, yeah, it's a dickish thing to say, but it's also
It's
very
also
true.
like, but I don't know who you are.
It's
Whereas
so
they
good.
were supposed to put Wolverine in the first Captain America, so you could say like
Right.
canonically they did know each other.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought that's what I liked. I know people are just going to be like, "Oh, this is just stupid fan fiction," which I say like, yeah, it's a superhero movie. Like, not, and they're not using it. They didn't do Deadpool kills the Marvel universe, which I thought would be the easiest way to do this.
True.
They, I mean, I think they made things a little too hard for themselves, but they
Yeah.
did try to tell a more original story than um I'm not going to say other movies, but just than they needed to.
Hmm. Hmm.
um yeah, it's very obviously not, oh, he has to kill off a bunch of people. It is, I'm trying to preserve life here. um but yeah, I thought that was like, oh wow, like, and because it doesn't just end with him falling and hitting his head, that you're like, oh no, now you gotta like go to Cassandra Nova now, or
Hmm.
and again, like he's the post credit scene as well, where it's like, oh wow, Deadpool wasn't lying.
So good.
I was just like, oh, okay. I really thought
So
Deadpool
good.
was lying.
I thought he was lying.
Everyone says I'm a shit talker. I didn't even like. He's the shit talker.
I legit thought it was like him, Deadpool pulling Deadpool's. Like, no, he was playing it for, which is so consistent. And this is what I do like about the movie is that um, they address the criticisms of the Deadpool character. For a lot of people, they don't like Deadpool or the way Ryan Reynolds does Deadpool, because it's like, yeah, you're just a man child constantly. You don't take anything seriously, which is what the Happy Hogan kind of scene is all about. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, I know I make a lot of
Like,
jokes,
grow
but
up.
I do care, like, and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. He's growing up and all that. So the idea that they're still able to do a Deadpool movie, but have his character actually go through development within the movie to be like, I'm a matured version of myself, and for him to act in a way that's consistent throughout this. I thought that was very, very well done, because I thought everyone kind of was aware that they were more interested in exploring the Wolverine of it all in this movie, because he's the new element, right? Like,
Mhm.
which Wolverine are we working with? And it's just like, okay, when a man child grows up, yeah, you take away a lot of the jokes, a lot of the quip, a lot of that kind of stuff, the defensiveness around him, right? Which is why, like, I do like the fact that they're like, they wrote in the fact that uh Vanessa broke up with him.
Mhm.
That because just like, if you take that away from someone, what are they left with their personality? And it's the idea of, he does need to step up. You actually do need to do the big boy thing, not just take away the comedy and then you're matured. You have to actually do and commit
Yeah,
to something
that
bigger.
argument they have where he's like, I'm right here. She's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And I was
Yes,
like, that's. I thought
it's really good.
that was really strong. Like
Yeah.
what they're getting across there, that
Mhm.
it isn't just, oh, you don't make jokes now. It's that he took away from Vanessa like the person she fell in love with him
Yes.
down spiraling and being like, well, I guess I'm not important then, and I guess I'm just gonna be a car salesman. It's like, well, no, like there's other parts of you that had joy and brought me joy that you've taken away as well.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm right here, and it's like, no, you're not here.
Yeah, because I mean that is one of the hardest things of anyone that is uh very man-child like to go through this growth is like there's almost an imposter syndrome aspect to that psyche to be like, oh, in order to grow up, I have to be boring. No, you don't. You very much can hang on to that side that, like you said, has joy in the world, finds the fun in the things and all that kind of stuff, but still act in a way that's appropriate, right? The idea of the mercenary was the childish part where he's just like, I'm doing everything for myself just to pay the next bills and all that kind of stuff. If he was able to do the car sales thing and still be jokey, I'm sure Vanessa and him would still be together in that regard,
I
right?
think I do think they did car salesman because of, obviously in general, not every car salesman's like, but like the lack of compassion that it involves to do that is a step down from a guy who's saved maybe not the world but his world 2 movies in a row, and then taking that kind of ambition away would be a problem. So I don't know if it was just you need to be funny while being a car salesman so much as, okay, you're not going to be an Avenger, but that doesn't mean you give up on the ambition to do things at a higher level.
Right.
So yeah, losing that humanity, I think, was the issue there, not just the jokes. Who's next? Is it really like not that many? Again, not cameos, but cameos until they get to like the Borderlands group.
So there is one cameo that is a huge one that I didn't think they would actually pull off. It was rumored, but I didn't think they would pull off, which is the Henry Cavill Wolverine.
Yes. Yeah, they do a montage. That one I knew was gonna happen, and I was like, I'm glad it's just this, and I'm glad he did the cocking his arms thing. Like I was like, good.
Yeah, that's such a
exactly
good thing.
what you need out of. Like, also they take a lot of shots in this movie. I'm sure they do it in the other ones, but it felt particularly biting in this one when he's like, "Yo, fuck those guys. They don't treat you well down the street. Like, this is exactly where you should be." And I'm like, huh. Or like at one point he goes like, "Oh, yeah, Wolverine fucked up ever since he got divorced." I'm like, is Hugh Jackman ready to joke about that right now? Like,
right.
And then there's the other one that when we get to, oh well, we can just talk about it now. The Borderlands group, which is Blade as played by Wesley Snipes, Elektra as played by Jennifer Garner, Gambit as played by Channing Tatum, and obviously Daphne Keane as X-23. And they basically say who else was on the team and who died, and then when they get to Daredevil, Deadpool's like, "Oh, sorry," and obviously it's Jennifer Garner saying this. So like, yeah, it's fine.
That's fine. I'm okay with it. Yeah. But also like the idea of like Johnny Storm being a part of that group too. It's like,
and that's funny that they keep it going where it's just like, oh yeah, and where's like Johnny went missing 2 days ago, and Deadpool can't even keep up the lie. He's just like, oh wow, like, well, he sounds like, I'm sure he's fine. And then he was like, oh yeah, when he died, and they're like, sorry, do you know him? And he's like, that's when I like that Wolverine steps. I'm like, yes, and he got him killed in a very violent way.
Yeah.
Like, hey, now we don't know he died. And it's like, well, if he didn't, I'm sure he wants to die now. No one wants to live like that.
Yeah, it's true. It's just like the way he died. He was like, oh my god, that's so.
Just ripped the skin off of him so everything fell apart.
Yeah, it's nuts. Oh my god, it was wild.
But yeah, that's a great group, and as I said, it took me a while, but because they let the scenes live, I had enough time to catch up and be like, oh right, like when he says, "I don't like you," and he goes, "Oh, you never did." I'm like, oh right, they didn't like each other when they worked together last time. Or the Ben Affleck Jennifer Garner joke, like I thought that was funny, and I loved everything to do with how Gambit kept joking about how he never actually got a shot.
Yeah,
I was kind of like, do they really not have room for X-23? Like that seemed like a weird. I get that they just needed her there to help the Wolverine in this movie, but it was kind of like, I just feel like out of all, like everyone here makes sense on some degree other than X-23. Like Blade is like, he was the first one, like that's like the first successful comic book movie, but doesn't get the credit it deserves. Hey, let me get some shine while everyone is okay with comic book movies now.
Mhm.
Elektra was kind of like, well, you kind of threw her out there as like a female hero, and then we're like, and here's a bad movie that doesn't really make sense. Like,
Yeah.
give her something to do. But X-23 was a movie that not me, but a lot of people think is the best comic book movie ever.
Yeah, I
You're kind of
mean,
like that. Would she be put in the void?
I mean, she's inherently put in the void just by the fact that there's no continuation past Logan, right? But the idea
But
of I think at that point it was just like, okay, let's and it's Marvel being like, let's identify the talent that we do want to keep around for future and all that kind of stuff. So I do like just where we see X-23 at the end of the movie is just like, yeah, that's smart. Keep her around. She
yeah,
would
well,
kind of
as I
be
said,
great with the Young
it goes
Avengers side of
against
things.
pre-established things, so
Yes, it
it
does. It
does
does.
break stuff. But and also just the idea when Wesley Snipes says there's only ever been one Blade, and there only ever will be one Blade, and they make Deadpool give the reaction like another like biting remark that it's kind of like you
Yeah.
really want that with the recent news and all this stuff of like
Hmm.
them losing half the cast and probably gonna lose Mahershala Ali. Like, is this? I'm not saying it's in poor taste. I was just like, oh, like they really did let Ryan Reynolds do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe this is maybe we do see a future where Wesley Snipes is still Blade again.
I
I
mean, I'm famously not up for that. Like, I don't. I want
I
new
agree.
characters. I like.
Yeah,
I want Wesley Snipes to be happy. If that makes him happy, whatever. But I would
sure.
rather see new people do it. That's the only way these things last longer. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't like like you if you're doing 89 Batman and you're like, but it's gonna be Adam West again. It's not really showing
So
growth.
yes, you're absolutely right. Which is why I'm like, oh man, that doesn't seem like they're putting a lot of faith in the Blade franchise. Then if they are going to use Wesley Snipes again, because the door is open for that now, like because of where they left the movie, maybe. But the idea, yeah, like the the troubled production that Blade is going through right now is just like, yikes, that is a rough joke for sure.
I'll say this. Like, obviously, it has nothing to do with the Deadpool and Wolverine
Mhm.
movie. I think it's good that they're not just moving forward with Blade. Like, if it's not where Mahershala Ali wants it, then I hope he keeps making a stink until it is where he wants it.
No, I agree with that.
Uh, and it seems like Kevin Feige agrees with that. That like it should. If we're doing this, then we need to do it right. I
Yeah.
think obviously people like to make fun of Marvel and MCU, and I'm not here to defend them. It's just I will I do like to push back if I feel like there's a lack in logic. So it
Yes.
can't be that they just rush out whatever and it's cookie cutter,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
but also they haven't been able to put this movie together. Why don't they just shove it? Why don't they just have him say everyone wants to ice skate uphill and just
Hmm.
put out the movie? Like, it can't be both of those. That
Yeah.
is what I would push back against. Obviously, Mahershala is like a 2-time Oscar-winning actor who said, "I want to do this," so it's
Yes.
probably going to be on his terms.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure he's just going to leave, but I'm fine with it not
Probably.
coming out and being shit, like, or
I
not what he wanted to do.
agree. If I get the whiff of like, oh yeah, he did it because he was contractually obligated and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, see, I don't want to. I don't. That doesn't make me excited for it.
Yeah,
It makes me more excited that there's artistic integrity being put into this and being like, we're not going to put it out if it's shit.
yeah.
If not everyone's happy about this, then we're not going to put this out.
And they
Like
haven't
I
started filming, which is good, I think, as well. Like,
yes.
it's not like, oh, we filmed and we realize it sucks. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, no, it's not good at the script level. So
Hmm.
we need to fix that.
Yeah. I so respect the integrity and I like it can take as long as it takes to get there. But it to me, I'm just like I do think that uh the change in leadership for Marvel in that sense of like Iger being like, oh, we're doing this, we're acting all this kind of stuff. Is they're willing to take less risks. So the idea that they're willing to polish it until it's good to put it out, I'm like, yeah, that's how you're going to renew the faith in Marvel, so to speak. If those the people that believe that the Phase 4 and the most recent stuff has not been good since Endgame, and I'm like, okay, well, those that believe that this is the kind of stuff that they have to pay attention to, as opposed to being like, you have to push out Blake because this is a
Hmm.
character I like, and I'm like, no. really think about what you're saying at that point.
Exactly.
If you don't want mediocrity, then you should expect delays in this kind of stuff. And I think that's more than fair. And I agree with you. I think at this point in time, because of how troubled it's been and how dissatisfied Marshall Ali's been, we're probably going to lose him. We're probably
Yeah.
going to lose him. Doesn't mean we're not going to get anyone good, but I would have preferred to see Marsha Ali.
Yeah.
But if we did see Wesley Snipes, I'm like, okay, it's a one and done then. They're just doing Blade and then they're putting him in Secret Wars and then it's one and done.
I will say this. There's no chance they're putting a bunch of money into doing a movie where Wesley Snipes is the lead as Blade.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. It's not.
He might show up in Secret Wars. They're not doing a movie where it's just him.
They're not building a new franchise with him.
I'm saying they wouldn't even do it as a one-off. Like at this point, they're not going to waste that either.
Yeah, like I said, like you said, if they do Secret Wars, they're more. If they haven't had a Blade movie out successfully, yeah, they're gonna put Wesley Snipes in there if they wanted to put Blade in that movie. Which to me, I'm like, that would be weird because I don't remember Blade being a part of Secret Wars, so they'd really have to push that in for a very specific reason. But at this point in time, it's just the idea that I saw them there, and like you said, the idea of them proving that there's no animosity between Ryan Reynolds and Wesley Snipes anymore is a great showing, right? It's just like, hey, they squash their beef, they have that healing off screen, they recognize that, hey, it's the studio that put us in this position, and like you, I will always defend Wesley Snipes the way he acted in Blade 3 because I'm just like, yeah, there, are you kidding me? He built what it is, and then the moment white people in the studios are like, oh yeah, we're gonna dispose of you and just like go with Jessica Biel and like Ryan Reynolds and all that kind of stuff. We're gonna continue this franchise. I would be pissed. I would be unprofessional because I'm like, you still got to pay me. I'm still showing up. I'm gonna be stoned all day.
Yeah. So yeah, I think those are all the. Because I already said B-15, which
yes,
that seemed weird to put that in the trailers, but what do you?
Yeah, but I mean, like to me, I'm like people would react, and I get why they put it in the trailer. If you're gonna put Daphne Keane in the trailer, you might as well put B-15 in there too. It is
I just
still
don't think they're the
whatever
same thing, right? Like
it's definitely
TV.
not.
That's why I'm saying I don't get why they did it, and I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. But it's like Daphne Keane, you're like, oh no, like we're gonna have that reunion. Come see the movie. We're gonna have that reunion.
Sure.
If people have never watched, like, if this was just the Deadpool audience, they'd just be like, I don't know who that is. Like that doesn't mean anything to me, unless they do like Loki. Like that's the crossover. But stands to reason with the amount of people that are going to see this movie, everyone isn't like, oh yeah, I watched Loki. I know who that is. Like it's not a selling point. So why not just keep it as a deep cut surprise?
True.
But yeah, so they're in the void. They have a lot of fun stuff going on there. They fight a lot, and I do like their car fight. Like I remember seeing it in the trailer and being like, "What is this?"
Good.
But the car fight, when I mean Wolverine and Deadpool, where I guess Wolverine finds out like, "Oh, you didn't know what you were talking about when you said they can fix this for you."
Yeah,
and I was like, I didn't even know why he believed Deadpool. Like, I guess whatever. But it was like he just really rips into Deadpool at that point.
Yeah,
verbally. Yeah. And I like that he's like, "What? You don't have anything to say?" And Deadpool's just like, "I'm gonna fight you now." They had a funny bit up top where he was like, "Say one more word. Give me one more word." And he goes, "Gubernatorial." Like that was funny. But then but I was just like, "Oh, he has to say something. Well, what's he gonna say?" And it was like, "You fucked up. I'm gonna fight you now." I was like, okay, all right, like here we go.
I love how straightforward that was. I love the fact that it's just like it is consistent with the maturity of where Deadpool's at now. It's just like the Deadpool and Deadpool 1 would have probably had a lot more to say and would just been like an verbal exchange back and forth. But the idea of like, oh, he's actually able to recognize that what Wolverine said actually hurt him, and he's like, okay, I actually just want to hurt you right now because I know that we're both gonna heal. It's just like it's so it's so good in that regard. It's so well done, and it's just another piece that like his character has matured. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I've been talking to a lot of people about like Marvel movies and all that kind of stuff, and they have said to me that like, oh, I don't like Deadpool. I don't like Deadpool. And these are, for context, women that are saying
Hmm.
this, which makes a lot of sense because I'm sure like a lot of women wouldn't want to deal with men, children in their life or all this kind of stuff. Um, but the idea of me being like, it's surprisingly self-aware in a very mature way, and this is exactly what I mean is like things that he's doing here is very consistent with the mature growth that he's shown throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, and I also acknowledge like it's kind of why I got mad up top about that critic that was like, "Oh, I had to watch it for work," and it's like, but you know, it's a Deadpool movie. This movie didn't um promote itself as anything else but a
Yeah.
Deadpool movie where you were finally going to see Deadpool and Wolverine work together. If
Yeah.
that, so I'm not saying you have to like it because it followed through on its promise.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is you should have already known you weren't going to like it. So you saying I don't like it doesn't really mean anything because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, it would be something if a critic that doesn't like Deadpool, which clearly this person doesn't, and other people I've seen say that this is the worst thing they've ever seen. If you don't like Deadpool and you said I liked it, then I would be like, interesting, not because it would be
Mhm.
validating, but it'd be like, oh, maybe I won't like it. Like, what changed that made
Yeah.
you like it? Like
Yeah. Was it trying to be something
that's a more
else?
interesting jumping off point. So I'm not saying like I only think it's valid if you like it. It's more like, yeah, you didn't like it, right? I don't need an article because you clearly just don't like Deadpool or
Yeah.
the Marvel thing. Your problem is whether you're being paid to or not. You can only talk about that, even though we're in a year where this is the only MCU movie. So,
Yes.
and there's been consistent movies coming out. So talk about those movies.
Mhm.
This is the worst movie you saw all year. Sure, but it's making you lose hope in cinema. Like, really, in a year where it's the only movie like this, like, settle down.
No.
Like, you,
Yeah.
like, it's not like you're like, oh, this is the third one we got, and it's like, yeah, man, like, there's a bunch of shit you could have been watching.
Yeah.
Like,
That's so
it,
silly to
it
me.
is. I will always be on the side of why don't you just talk about what you like? Like
Yeah.
even if your review was tearing this movie apart in contrast to something you actually liked, be bold enough to talk about what you like. What do you value in movies then that was missing here?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to defend MC. I'm saying that will point people in the direction of stuff that you like, and maybe they'll start liking that too. Like that,
Mhm.
I'm all fine if this all goes away and we don't get superhero. But like, I get really annoyed with people that act like cinema's dead because people go out and see these movies. Like, if you're not
Yeah.
talking about the movies you like, then you're part of the problem as well.
Yeah.
If you're not
In
going
the
to see the original movies, you're part of the problem. And again, that comes from critics that get to watch this shit for free. So they're also
yeah.
not contributing to this.
So one of the big things I will say to those people too, like the idea of like, oh, cinema's dead, cinema's dead. I'm like, okay, well, understand at the end, at the very, very bottom line of this is a business. We have to keep doors open. And if cinema, what they regard as cinema, is not pulling in the ticket sales that these are pulling ticket sales and concession sales and merch sales and all that kind of stuff because they can't be marketed to kids the same way, then I'm like, you're your own undoing. If you say that cinema has to be this and that this is garbage dribble, yada yada, all that kind of stuff, you're not acknowledging the business side of this, which is a very real side of this because this movie will profit and it will continue to keep the cinema, like the movie theaters open and all that kind of stuff, right? That is
Oh,
the
yeah.
bigger picture. And I'm like, people really need to just back off that whole perspective of like, and just be like, this isn't for me. This is not what I normally like. And to your point, find the thing that you do like in this. Find the redeeming factor because
No,
the
not in
fact
the
that
movie. What I'm saying
Mhm,
is, even if it was like, this is the worst thing they did, this is shit, this is shit.
mhm,
Why not do something like and pick a movie? If you can't even think of a movie that's recent that other people should be watching instead of this,
mhm.
and all you're doing is just shitting on this and acting like this is the end of cinema, then there's a problem because there are movies that came out this year that I like more than this movie
Yeah.
that have nothing to do with superheroes.
Mhm.
And so, like, maybe it's a you problem if you can't find anything to like anymore, and maybe you don't like cinema as much as you think you do.
It's true. It's true. It's just like, yeah, are you accepting the fact that you're entering the bitter old man phase of your life and nothing is fun for you anymore? And I'm just like, then retire. What are you what are you doing?
That is what I responded when he was like, "Oh, I have to do it for work." I'm like, then give the work to someone else.
Yeah,
Get
retire.
you're fine. If life if the worst thing in your life, which is what your tweet is putting out there, I can only go off of what you put out there. The worst thing in your life is that you were forced to go watch a movie. I don't even care
Mhm.
what movie it is. You're doing pretty fine. Maybe you can stand to not take that
It's
piece of
true.
work.
It's true. It's very, very much true. And then, obviously like, and I'm not like completely ignorant to this. I know like film critics attached to like newspapers and media outlets and all that kind of stuff constantly have to watch their assigned movies to do and all that kind of stuff. But to your point, it's just if you're going to enter in with that much bias, you might as well enter in with the idea of like, listen, I already don't think this is cinema. That's okay. But what did you enjoy out of it? What was the redeeming factor? Was it complete shit? Because nothing can be complete shit. Nothing can be complete shit.
I am here to say I can understand how someone would think this movie is complete shit. I'm just
Mm,
saying that the the problem comes more from then just focusing on this movie as the problem instead of being like I've made an effort to not talk about things I don't like on this
yes.
podcast. Even if we are reviewing a movie I don't like, it will live within that episode. I'm not going to bring up stuff I don't like again because
Yeah.
I want people to know about the things I actually like. I don't think
Mhm.
it's that interesting to shit on the things you don't actually like at this point in my life. I think that it's not that like sharing what I like so that I can find commonalities, and that is more community building to me than oh, this is shit. Because I
Yes.
think my what I'm knee jerk reacting to is the gatekeeperiness of it all,
Yeah.
which seems stupid to me.
Yeah.
In a time where the idea is, as you said, we want movie theaters to keep staying open and for
Yep.
people to have these shared experiences. Then talk about the movies you want people to go to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the fun thing, right? With the people that are like, oh, this isn't cinema, this isn't this and this is like recently, and this is very, very funny. And I know she's probably not going to hear this, but like I'm going to call her out here again, like I've called her out in personal like exchanges and all that kind of stuff. But they were like, I don't like superhero movies. I don't like superheroes. I'm like, what superhero movies have you watched? And they list off Watchmen and God, what was the other one? Transformers. And I'm like, so you're bringing up Snyder and Michael Bay as your reasons? Like that's to me, I'm like, that doesn't track. Like no one's saying that those are excellent movies. We're saying they're entertaining movies. But like entertaining goes a far away, right? Like it's just like let's just sit down and have some fun right now. That's
Mhm.
what this is. Um, can certain movies within the genre elevate that like Logan does? Absolutely. Is this movie trying to be that? No, no, it's not.
Yeah,
And I think that's where it's really, really good and self-aware. It's just like, what did this critic think it was trying to do? Was it trying to be Godfather? Was it trying to be like, The Sopranos? I'm like, no, it's a Deadpool movie.
yeah. I think that's another thing that I've always felt that I saw someone give the words to, which is if you're an adult who has gone through the schooling system, let's say past grade 10,
Mhm.
it is expected of you that if you are reading something or watching something, that you not only understand what you just read or watched, but that you understand who it is for.
Yes.
So, as I said, this movie was never promoted as anything else than we're going to have another hurrah with Deadpool because now we've got Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Yep.
If that doesn't sound interesting to you, that's fair. That's fine. But it also means there was nothing that this movie was going to do to help you with that because
Exactly.
it was telling you exactly who it was for. You didn't even have to watch it. It was telling you very loudly who
Mhm.
this was for and what it was trying to do.
Yep.
So the disingenuous, like, it looks bad, and like the color grading is bad, and the paper thin plot. It's like, yeah, man, yeah, that's
Uh,
that's not what they were interested in.
yeah, that
And you
critique
can
is
give it the
surface
0 out
level.
of 10. I'm not saying you have to be like it's 10 out of 10 because it did exactly
Mhm,
what it said.
mhm.
I think that there's also a thing of like just because you see the vision doesn't mean you have to like it.
Yes.
I'm just saying that all this energy put into bashing these things is ill placed. And
Yeah.
there is a way of community building that gets to the point where you are sharing, you're putting yourself on the line there and saying, this is what I actually like. I think it's
Mhm.
way easier to be like, that was stupid. I don't like
Yeah.
it. And that's fine. Don't like it. And I'm saying, and I mean this more for like the internet critics. Like if you're working at a newspaper like this
Yeah.
guy was, yeah, maybe you can't shift that work. I doubt
Mhm.
it, but maybe you can't. I would say you probably could. But like yeah, just the hate culture. It's
The
annoying.
rage baiting.
Yeah, the
Yeah, the
rage
rage
baiting and the
baiting's
hate
not
stuff.
good.
Like just state up front what you like, and it doesn't have to be superhero movies. If your
Mhm.
shit is I'm really loving the run we're having with horror movies. Then
Yep.
I'm saying like it doesn't have to be everything's The Godfather trying to get an Oscar, but like what is fun to you? What do you like? What do you want people to be watching so that cinema can be saved in your eyes?
Mhm.
It's a lot easier for people to know what to look for when you name it, as opposed to just being like, "Oh, I guess this is shit then," and then
Yeah.
nothing's good.
Like, so whenever I see that now, if I was the same people pleaser I was like, 3 years ago, I almost want to just like put everything aside and be like, are you okay? Like, is
Yeah,
everything okay in
yeah.
your life? Like, this is a lot of hate you're spewing for like no reason whatsoever. Really, it's just like, why are you shitting on everyone else's are you okay? It's the idea of not trying to be toxically positive, but not trying to be excessively negative either, right? And it's
You
just
can still be a dick if you're being like, "This is what I think is good," but it's like, so it's not
correct.
about the positivity. It's more about uh, it's a framework that I like to use in work, and I feel like it should be applied to most things, which is called
Mhm.
appreciative inquiry, which means you don't
I like
talk
that.
about what you don't want. So, like, if you were running a meeting, you wouldn't be like, "All right, so let's not do this." All you ever do is say, "So I want to see people doing this," and so you're giving people. And again, this I'm not talking about movies. I'm talking about if in a work setting, you're
Mhm.
just giving people the tools to identify what success looks like. You
Correct.
don't even bother with saying what failure looks like. All you're
Mhm.
doing is putting in people's head what success looks like.
Mhm.
And so that's why I keep coming back to if you are in a space where people listen to your opinion and your worry is that all we're doing is watching superhero movies, you are the problem if you are not giving people what success looks like in the form
Mhm.
of I like this movie. I think this movie is great. Let's
Mhm.
watch this. Why don't you watch this instead? You know why this movie is bad and this one isn't because this. Like
Mhm.
you don't I understand there's money attached to it, but like realistically, if the genuine concern was that people aren't watching what they need to watch and that's going to kill off cinema,
Mhm.
then let people know what they should be watching.
Mhm. Mhm. There are some legitimate critiques on superhero movies. That makes sense to me that I could fully understand where they're coming from. Like when people go, "Oh, it's a CGI fest. It's this, it's this." I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, "Okay, that's legitimate. Can you give me an example of a movie that has been able to subvert that for you and prevent you from thinking it's a CGI fest and all that kind of stuff?" And they will bring you down to like lower street level kind of things where it's like, "Oh, it's more hand-to-hand combat. It's more this, it's more this, it's more." I'm like, "Okay, good, we're working with something, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
working with something that this is what is actually going to get this person to actually pay a little bit more attention and all that kind of stuff. I get that. That is to me legitimate criticism. But when someone's just like, "Oh, superhero movies are the death of cinema. It's this, it's this, it's this." I'm like, why does that energy not get returned to something like Despicable Me or like Minions or something like that? Where I'm like, objectively, that's not cinema. That is
But
just
again, that
things
is
for
for
family
kids.
and all that
But
kind of
that's what I
stuff.
was talking about before, whereas everyone is able
No,
to understand who that's for. So there's no
correct.
point. There's no point in putting that energy in that because that
Yeah,
is for kids to go
exactly.
watch.
But like
And
that,
so then
just building
people are
off the
worried.
point.
But so then my point is, people are
Mhm.
worried that adults aren't growing up from that. But what I'm saying is, then then talk about the stuff you think is adult
Yeah.
worthy. It can't be that you just keep shitting on these things that are remade because people go out and watch them. I guess people said they didn't like it, but there was that movie, The Creator, with John David Washington. No one went to see
Sure.
that, but that's an original sci-fi movie. I'm not even talking about stuff that's like a drama and like adult. I'm just saying like things that are supposed to be fun and pack a theater. Like
Mhm.
people aren't going to see those original things. Like you hear things like Bike Riders is in theaters for 2 weeks. They're pulling it. Like movies are in theaters for like a week. They're pulling it
Yep.
because people aren't talking about it as if it is out. People
Mhm.
learn that it was out when they hear that 1 week cutoff,
Mhm.
and I think that's part of the critique that's going on, that people aren't talking about these more. But
Yeah.
let's get back to the movie.
Yeah, because we really derailed ourselves for a little bit, but it's something that I genuinely feel passionate about because it's yeah, to dismiss something that people like just because you're not a fan of it, just know I love what you said. Know who this is for, right? And if it's not for you, then just take it in good faith and move on. But yeah, like getting back to the Deadpool thing, um, I think with all the amount of people that showed up, I think the biggest surprises to me were the people that didn't show up that were heavily rumored around this. Like to me, the Halle Berry thing, I'm like, oh man, Halle Berry really didn't show up in this movie, even though she had like the storm hair and all that kind of stuff in that Instagram post and all that. Like I thought it was a given that she was going to show up at some point in that flashback where like Emma Corrin's character is doing that
Oh yeah,
brain
Cassandra Nova.
thing,
Yeah,
Cassandra Nova, and that oh my God, that brain thing was
that's messed
so
up. When she did it to
wild.
the TVA agent, that like Mr. Paradox, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this. For some reason, it was fine before, and now I'm like really upset. Now it's really
Yeah, because the
upsetting.
healing factors. You're like, okay, yeah, the healing factors. But now I'm like, oh, this is weird. Um, it to me, it was just like the people that didn't show up to me that were heavily rumored to show up, and I'm not talking about the Taylor Swift thing. I couldn't care less about that. But it's the idea of like, oh, that was the thing that actually caught me off surprise with this movie.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
we didn't say the two other. These actually felt like cameos, which is they keep. There's Nice Pool, who doesn't have to wear a mask, and he keeps playing like, yeah, there's gonna be like a Deadpool horde. You're gonna want to watch out for them. So
yeah.
they finally show up, and yeah, it's Blake Lively as
Yep.
Lady Pool, and Matthew McConaughey as like Cowboy Pool, and I was just like,
I didn't know it was
I was
Matthew
like, Matthew
McConaughey.
McConaughey, wow. Like, I don't even know what the connection is there. Like, everyone else that showed up, I was like, I get the connection. But
Yeah.
the Matthew McConaughey one, and Mac from It's Always Sunny was one of the TVA agents. I think it's the one where he's like, we're going to have sex, and I want extreme eye contact. Not you, you. I can't see your eyes, but I can feel it.
Yeah, that was good. I
Uh,
thought he was I thought he was the Wrexham FC
I
Deadpool.
thought it would have been, but apparently he was a TVA agent.
Yeah, okay,
He
okay.
was a Minuteman.
Yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, those are. I think those are the. Finally, we've got to all of the cameos, quote unquote, which was
Hmm.
Blake Lively, his wife, which I also thought was funny when he's like, "Geez, get your head out of my pants. I'm gonna tell Blake."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Lively is the voice of Lady Pool. I heard that it's just a stunt woman and not just. It
Ah.
is not a actor that we know by name. Uh, in the suit, that is a stunt woman, and Blake Lively is providing the voice.
So
Um,
one thing I thought was funny though, the entire time everyone was like, "Oh, there's Lady Deadpool. She's gonna be Blake Lively. She's gonna be Taylor Swift." I'm like, "Who the hell cares? She's not gonna take off her mask." Like that was what my initial thought was, and I'm like, I'm glad that they didn't take off their mask to be like, "Here's like you only get confirmation in the credits," and
Yeah,
I
because I
thought
was
that
like,
was
this
so
could be
great.
Blake or Taylor. I can't tell from the
It could,
voice. Like,
yeah,
I was like, I don't know them enough to know which one it is.
yes.
Um, so yes, in the credits, luckily there was someone there that was like, it was Blake. I was like, thank you for that,
That's
because I did not
that's
know.
what I was looking at. I was like, I'm reading this time. I'm reading what that is, and they
Yeah,
luckily did. I'm like, yeah, okay, Blake Lively, cool. That's
but
good.
yeah, it did. Matthew McConaughey's the cowboy, like gunslinger,
Mhm.
Deadpool. Um, that was a fun fight too, because at first I thought that was good setup and payoff, which was Deadpool uses Nice Pool as a human shield and you are, and Wolverine is kind of like, are you doing this on purpose, or did you know he could regenerate? And then Nightwing's like, what's regenerate? And he just dies, and like he gets his head blown up and everything. And so then it's funny that they think like, all right, now we're gonna Hugh's gonna put on the mask. He's gonna do. It took me a while, but I got there to be like, I guess this does look cool, like on certain angles, not every angle, but certain angles the mask looks cool. And they just tear through the Deadpools. And at first I was like, well, they've given me enough doubt to be like they could die. Initially, I would have thought, well, they're just gonna get back up, but they did the thing with Nice Pool for me to be like, are they gonna get back up? And then they do, and like, oh, I guess these ones do regenerate. I'm like, that's. I thought that was a funny payoff.
Yeah, it was really, really good. The fact that he gives Nice Pool a pep talk while he's still using him as a human shield and all that for
He's like,
no
why'd you
reason
stop?
whatsoever.
And he's like, you're heavy. What are you doing with your legs? He's like, I'm paralyzed. He's like, well.
It's so good. It's so good. And it's purely like the pettiness of like, yeah, you look the way I was supposed to look before all this. Yeah. And it was just hilarious.
And I like that Nice Pool was like, hey, I can lightly brush the fourth wall too. The proposal.
That to me was so good. So good.
But yeah, that's also the scene where Deadpool's like, time out. Can we just stop with this? It's like, well, we're gonna fight. He's like, no, I mean the multiverse stuff. Like, I don't agree with this, but it was another joke that they had in there. Was like, oh wow, they're going for it, I guess. Where he's like, no, let's stop the multiverse thing. It just sucks. It's been L after L, and Nice Pool's just like, no.
Yeah, I like how the pun to that was like, the gays got it right. We haven't had a good multiverse story since the Wizard of Oz, and I'm like, that's really funny. That's really goddamn funny.
And there is elements of Wizard of Oz in this too, which is
yes, there is
that they're collecting a team and everyone has this wish that they want, and specifically Wolverine, which we haven't talked a lot about, but like that he's kind of like realizing Deadpool is kind of the Wizard of Oz, and like, wait, so you don't have like what? You don't have a way of getting us home, like, or fixing things?
Educated wish.
Yeah,
educated wish.
I appreciate that, but I think both Hugh and Ryan did a good job of digging deep into their characters. Obviously, this isn't the same Wolverine that we had, but I felt his pain and I enjoyed him when I needed to enjoy him. And I'd say the same about Ryan's performance, that I felt his pain when I needed to, and he did the Deadpool thing. Like, I thought he slipped right back into being Deadpool. But I did like the opening bit of like, a lot of people are worried that we're gonna desecrate Logan, but he's not dead. And then it's like he opened up, he's like, oh fuck, he is dead, and then just proceed to desecrate the whole thing. Yeah, even down to like sitting after with him and be like, hey, I always wanted to do this. Too bad you're dead. Like,
yeah, it's so like, good.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I saw people online being like, they ruined it. And I'm like, I don't see how. Though. Like, he's still dead. They just visually dug up his bones and were disrespectful, like you would expect Deadpool to be. But like, they didn't say the events of Logan didn't happen.
They didn't pull that Logan into this timeline or anything like that. They didn't. Yeah, like that would have been the big thing. Is like, are you going to pull that Logan, from that timeline into this? And no, they didn't.
And
so
right up top, they're like, no, he's dead. That's done.
As respectful as they were still disrespectful to the body, which is hilarious. It's so funny. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah, I think the only thing they do is that's clearly the X-23, but now she gets to be with her dad figure again. So I'm like, that's a net positive to me. I'm not that upset about it.
I think everyone's winning from that. I love Daphne Keene in that. That was the only concern with Logan. It's like, that means we don't get any more Daphne Keene. And the fact that she still brought those sunglasses back to be like, that was great. Rage mode was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought that this movie, I'm not saying everyone has to grade this way, but I feel like what I do is I take into account what is this movie trying to say and who is it for, and how well do I think they accomplished that. It's not in competition with other things. Like, when I give my grade to this, it's higher than a very classic movie I just saw, but that's because I felt like that classic movie didn't achieve what it was trying to do as well as this movie did. But I'm not saying that's how everyone should see it. I'm just saying like that is how I grade things in my head of like what was this actually trying to get done, and how much did I enjoy it or like feel surprised by things. And in a world where I knew all the cameos that were going to come, and so then the joy for me came from like, oh wow, they're using them well. Like this doesn't feel tacked on. And this is not a slight to Doctor Strange Multiverse, because I feel like that's what I've seen the beginnings of in the early reactions of like, at least they didn't just kill them off like the Illuminati. I'm like, you needed to kill off the Illuminati. That was the point, was to show the might of Scarlet Witch. And like, do I need a movie of John Krasinski, Reed Richards? No, not at all. I thought that was a nice thing that I didn't know was going to happen for sure. Because that was a movie where everyone was going to show up. Like, oh yeah, they got Ben Affleck, Daredevil in that one, and so then this time I made sure to be like, let me find out the scoopers that are saying who's actually in this, because I don't want that kind of thing again. But I liked that movie wasn't about cameos. So this isn't me being like, this movie did it better. It's just like, in a movie where everyone kept saying there's going to be these cameos, I thought they executed well in a way that interrogated what they were going after, which is people who feel like they need to matter in a world that's either passing them by or never even considered them in the first place, like Channing Tatum Gambit. I thought that was a good way of exploring that thing that we always talk about, like the sentence or the thought that the movie is about.
I did like how Channing Tatum's Gambit was like so damn Cajun that you're like, yeah, I don't understand a goddamn word you're saying right now. This is hilarious to me.
I feel like at points they were doing that on purpose.
100%.
Like, I think in general you could hear him, but I did think it was funny when Deadpool was like, does anyone else feel like we're missing big parts of exposition here? Like,
yeah,
what are you saying?
It's really, really good.
So yeah, I think, as I said, the two villains who we haven't talked about yet, like, I thought they were well thought out as well. I mean, not the plan from the rogue TVA agent. That's not a well thought out plan, but that's not his. That's the writing that's wrong.
Yes.
His whole thing was he felt like, and this is important to have seen Loki seasons 1 and 2. He's like, well, we're not doing what we used to do, which is pruning people and just getting this shit done quickly. We're just letting things happen naturally, and I'm not for that. So he's like, I need to still matter. I need to hold on to that. So I'm going to do this on my own and try and do it under the radar. No one's going to, except for my two friends here, no one's going to know what's going on here. That was a cool thing that I felt like they did a good job of keeping out of the trailers. That like, he's operating on his own. He doesn't actually represent the TVA. And that it still plays into Loki season 2. But and then obviously Cassandra Nova just being like, my brother never even came to find me. Like, yeah, we do get Charles Xavier's because that's how I got this chair, but it's never my brother. And feeling like she doesn't matter as well, and needing to feel. I really liked every scene with her. There was a point where I was like, oh, they don't have a lot of her, but then they kind of just put her on the back end of the movie. Because they basically, the plan that the Borderland people come up with is, if we can take Juggernaut's helmet off. I didn't know they were going to put it on her. I thought it was like, oh, we're going to put it on and that way she can't control us. But obviously they were going to put the helmet on her so she can't use her powers. And I love that she was like laughing at one point, like, well, you're going to have to take the helmet off if you want me to get you out of here. Like, idiots.
I love that too, because I'm like, this is not a good plan. This is so silly. It's a very Deadpool like plan. But like the idea of like them actually coming to the idea of like Pyro's the mole or whatever you want to call it.
He's working with the Mr. Paradox from TV.
Yeah. And him like backstabbing and doing all that kind of stuff. So that it's tied together with the idea of like, okay, how do you make it so that when you take off the helmet, she's not going to kill you immediately? You kind of make it so that you have to save her life through that process. I thought that was really, really well done. Like, I was genuinely so happy to see that. And then the other through line too, where it's like Hugh Jackman's not going to let him do his like villain monologue.
It's like, not everyone gets a monologue. Or when he says like, no, take the helmet off of her. And Deadpool's like, what do you mean, Mr. PG-13, except for the last one? And then he's like, I'm an X-Man. I'm not going to, like, I wouldn't. Your brother would have loved you if he met you, and he certainly wouldn't let me just stand here and
Mhm.
watch you die. Like, it's what we talk about, the whole like who wants to be effective, but who wants to look good. But
Mhm.
uh, it made sense in that moment that the X-Men that feels bad about letting everyone down would be like, well, here's my chance to matter and not make the same mistake and just let something happen again. I don't want to let death happen again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's better than some people give it credit for, um, while still being clearly flawed on the outset.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
but
think
yeah,
that's the flaws are just because like the strict rules that Marvel has up until now has put upon itself with like the story writing, the timelines, and all that kind of stuff. I think that's where it's like, I don't think that's this movie's fault.
no, I do think it's its fault because they introduced the idea of an anchor being and then
True.
completely ignored it.
That's true. That's true.
So it's
But
like
they also did
you
say
that
like
makes sense.
like if the anchor meetings got done, this universe won't survive. And it's like, well, how long does that last? Now, like the fact that Paradox is like, oh, about 1,000 or so years or something
Yeah,
like
but
that. So it's
then
like a slow death.
well, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I like that his whole thing
Mhm.
was like, why don't we just put things out of their misery? Why are we doing this? But
Yep.
then they have B-15 be like, not only did you save your universe, but it's regenerating, and it's like, what? Like, what? What do
Hmm.
you mean?
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, I shouldn't have to think that hard about this. And I think the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I don't think this makes sense what you've set up.
Yeah.
And that is strictly rules they came up for with themselves.
Right.
That what it doesn't fit into what MCU has put together, as we
Hmm.
said, like the whole, it's been established like if a character from a different timeline sticks around too long, it's going to dissolve it,
Hmm.
the universe. So the whole happy ending with X-23 and Logan, you're kind of like, I think you guys got to go.
Yeah.
But that's whatever. That's, as you said, those are MCU rules. Maybe they don't want to play by those. But then they set up the other thing of the anchor being, which is kind of like, well, now I don't know what you're doing.
That's I oh my God, I loved every part of Paradox laughing his ass off and being like, could you
Imagine if you
imagine
were
that
the
you
imagine.
were the anchor being? And he was just laughing. I'm like, this is so great. He
He's like,
legitimately thought, it's
okay,
like,
I'll do it.
I
He's like,
am
okay.
important. This is great. I'm important. And he just laughs his ass off. I'm like, no, 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 no. You
uh,
don't get told that. You have to prove it. It's
I loved
hilarious.
when Cassandra Nova was like, no, I'm going to kill you guys, and then flick my bean to the Enya box set. It's like, that's great.
Ryan Reynolds, there's an Enya box set. This is great.
Or earlier on when Deadpool, like when she was in Deadpool's head, and he's like,
Mm.
she didn't say that. He's like, and just the way her delivery of, but I bet she was thinking it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that she was great. I
I did
also,
like her a
even with
lot.
her limited time,
Mhm.
screen time, felt the pain of her being like, well, they sent me here, but at least I get to matter here. So I'm
Yeah.
not really in a rush to leave. And she says that to Paradox later of like,
Mhm.
yeah, like we had a good thing going. You send me your shit. I feel like a god. I get to matter. But then you had
You
the
fucked
mole
it
there
all
and
up.
you messed it up and now the fence has to come down. You start pissing on my side of the fence. And the hurt of like, oh, must be nice. My brother loved you, but he never like he never looked for me or loved me.
Mhm.
I thought all of that was effective for me.
Yes. For me, it was very, very effective too, because I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, very much like Deadpool and his joking around, his defensiveness and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, you still need to know that you matter. And
Mm-hmm.
so to him in Vanessa breaking up and us knowing that like he's basically the like Vanessa relationship with Ryan with Deadpool was like the only thing that made him cemented and feel like it mattered and therefore put too much weight on that. She had the exact same thing, as does Hugh Jackman, Logan in this situation of like he needed to feel like he mattered after what he did and all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff because everything was openly rejecting him and all that. And the same thing with Paradox too, like the idea that he's like, hey, I believe in the old ways. The old ways matter to me, but I like it's the make America great kind of nonsense
Yeah, yeah.
again, where
But
he,
that's
you know,
something
it's
that is well observed and well
exactly
thought out in this. And
very well done.
yeah, I I did like the comic accurate Wolverine. That was a funny sight gag.
I will say, like, they really did a lot to just like when you say fan service, I'm like, yeah, that first like act was pure fan service of like this is every Wolverine that we've ever seen, or like is in the comic and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that it's like, oh yeah, comic accurate Wolverine. And it's like he calls him a short king. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
Wolverine's really tiny according to
yeah,
the comics. It's like 5'2" or something like that, right? So the idea of like when people are selective in their criticisms, be like, "Oh, I want a comic accurate suit," and I'm like, okay, but you can't say you want a comic accurate suit, but not also recognize that he's supposed to be 5'2" in the freaking comics too. But I will say the brown and yellow suit that looked amazing too. That looked
such a
really,
great
really good.
moment where he's like, "Wait, don't you fight the Hulk in this suit?"
Yeah,
And then he's like, "No, I'm Marvel Jesus. I will not stand." It was good stuff.
yeah.
The Hulk beats him up. That was the sound effect I was trying to make there. Yeah, I even thought that when Cassandra Nova's like, "I'm gonna use the machine to ruin everything so that I really will be God by just controlling the void," I was like, they didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I get it.
Yeah,
I'm on board with this motivation. I don't think she should succeed, but I get it. Like, yeah,
it's it's
you
logical.
you
Yeah.
ruined this. We had an agreement. You ruined it, and now
Mhm.
everything has to suffer.
Yep. Yep. Makes complete sense to me. Like, yeah, it does. Um, but uh, God, again, Yukio's in this, and I love
I
every kind
For
of
whatever
interaction
reason
with
I
Yukio.
really like in this movie Ryan Reynolds' reactions to Yukio. Like, Yukio
Yeah.
is just she's firing on all cylinders. Like, if you liked her in the second movie, you're going to like her here.
Mhm.
But there's something about I I might be putting too much into it, but there's something about the way Ryan's playing it as someone who is depressed right now, but find like getting some form of positivity in his life, that
Mhm.
he's appreciating it a little bit more
Mhm.
this time around. It feels like that he appreciates Yukio a little bit more in this movie because it is this source of positivity in a downward spiral he's having.
Yes, absolutely. It's just so good. She's not consequential to any part of the whole thing other than the fact that like she wants us like that, but just the interaction. He does get so much more out of that than anything else. Like at his own birthday party, I just think it's funny to be like, oh yeah, they really did kill the joy. He is having small talk right now. He's
Yeah.
doing all these kind of things, but that interaction with Yukio was so he was just genuinely so excited for her to be there, and
Hmm.
I'm like, this is great. This is so so good.
Yeah.
Um,
I also like
Shatterstar makes it out alive, which to me, I'm like, wait,
I think that's
that
just
was a
like a friendship
surprise.
in terms of actors, not necessarily character. I think that's just like I like
Mm,
Louis Tran. Let's yeah, go ahead.
right, right,
Because I
right.
was like, why wouldn't Domino and Cable be back? Like maybe not Cable. I get the sense he went and did his own thing
Yeah,
to be with his family, but why not Domino? And I knew ahead of time she's not in it. They said,
yeah.
like, but I was just like, it just seems like if Shatterstar's there, then Domino should be there.
I agree. Like that to me
Didn't
was the
I
thing
wasn't
that
hung
felt
up on it.
weird.
It's one of those things that I knew going into it. I'm not gonna see her, so it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
like, it was just like interesting selection of people, and we know why
Mhm.
T.J. Miller is not there. That again is just more real
Yeah,
life stuff,
because
less.
he's a scumbag.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and
very
yeah,
much
but
so.
like the Josh Brolin thing, I was actually a little surprised with because I was just like, I was looking forward to seeing what joke that they would have made for that,
I
but they
feel like
just
they.
kind of left him out
I
entirely.
like that he's talking to Happy, and he's like, "Well, yeah, no, I was the leader of X Force, but they all kind of died except for Cape. No, I can see you pulling away. Please, please." He's like, "Oh
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
standing up." He's like, "Yeah, this is the part where we stand up."
It's like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah,
It's so funny.
yeah. They didn't
Uh,
make any Josh Brolin jokes. They didn't reference Domino at all.
mhm, mhm.
Um, what's the guy's name?
It's
Pete. He's back. He had. I like
yeah.
that. I like that every Deadpool likes Pete. Like, it
Oh
doesn't
my God,
matter where you're from, you're gonna like Pete.
so good. The the best thing about Pete was that really sexually charged interaction that he had with
With B-15.
B-15.
I
That was so damn funny to me. I'm like, this is
I
great.
I
I
yeah,
loved it.
I there was something off about the performance for me from B15 on that. But what I did laugh at with Pete was when he's like, "Oh, a friend of mine during his midlife crisis got his nipples pierced and it connects to his Johansson," and then like you find out it's him, which I was kind of like, "Oh, who are they gonna get? That's his friend." And then when it was him, I was like, "That is very funny." And they're like, What's going on there?" He's like, "That's the fun part."
I just love that they were yanking on
Yeah.
it.
And he's like, "Yeah,
The
that's the
party.
fun part."
He's like, "Ooh." And I'm like, ha, 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 ha. This is great. It's so good.
Yeah,
And then seeing him in the dead, like squeezed into the
Mhm.
Deadpool suit, I'm like, this is so much fun. And just the idea of like, he's with me. I'm like, this is
And they're
perfect.
one of the Deadpool's like, "Wait, that's Pete," and then everyone's like, "Oh, great, yes, Pete."
Pete,
Everybody
Pete,
loves
Pete,
Pete.
Pete. They're just like, that's the distraction that they can
Yeah.
just skew away from. I'm like, this is great. Everything
Um,
about it's so good. So, yeah.
yeah. What else is there? Um.
I'm glad that dog pool stays to the end.
Oh yeah.
That's just genuinely funny to me.
I feel like that's why he killed Nice Pool. He's like, I'm the dad.
Yeah, and for
you're gonna be out of
the guns and for the
right.
gold-plated
Yes,
deagles.
he does very
Mhm.
immediately pay off the and now I have these guns.
He's like, "Can I have those?" And
He's
he
like,
just laughs it off.
why would I do that? No.
Yeah, that's silly. Um, I loved so much of this movie. It was a lot of it was a lot of fun. I think it does leave a lot of questions of where we like it opens up more questions than it answers in that regard of like, are we gonna see Jennifer Garner Electra going? I'm like, that's not something I really genuinely want.
I mean,
But
not to me. To me, it seems
mhm.
like yeah, this was their like the meta of it is, hey, Ryan had the pull
Yes.
to stay alive in the
Mhm.
MCU. All these other characters are going to be gone because they're not MCU, they're not Disney,
Mhm.
and let me bring you along on this last ride.
Yep.
You
Okay.
can, yeah. That's how I looked at it. That it
Okay.
was like this is just a fun way to say goodbye to these.
Mhm.
Like I maybe would have had more questions if the movie didn't end with the what you said, like the graduation video. Like
Yeah.
that seems pretty final to me. Of like, all right, we said goodbye to this.
Yeah.
This is done. I know the joke is also he keeps telling Hugh Jackman, not the character, but the actor, you're gonna be doing this till you're 90.
Yeah.
Which, again, as I said, I'm not a fan of, but I get that they will probably bring him in because they keep wanting to keep that multiversal stuff
Mhm.
alive.
Mhm.
But they will have new versions of these characters, specifically Elektra. We already know they have another Blade. Like
Yeah.
it's going to, and definitely they're going to have a new Gambit. So this just felt like, hey, thank you for your service. Have some fun on this way out.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. It's because and it felt bad, especially the Channing Tatum thing, right? The amount of like work that he did to kind of get this whole ball rolling and it never executed. I'm
He
like,
was
I'm
Mahershala Ali
glad.
before Mahershala Ali.
Exactly. I'm glad he got that little bit of a send off, and we got to see some genuinely cool Gambit fight scenes
Hmm.
in that
And
whole
I was like,
thing.
and he probably could do it because he's a dancer, so he can do some of the stuff they're showing me right here. Like
Yeah.
it just was like, yeah, great. And Wesley Snipes didn't look like he had fallen off a little bit at all. Really, like he was
Mhm.
still doing the cool Blade stuff.
He looked good.
Yeah,
He looked really good.
I just, it felt like a nice way to send these characters off.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, it's I mean, at the end of it, we see X-23 and Logan and everyone just like very much alive. Um, which that those three characters. I mean, Logan and I did not expect Logan to make it out of this. When they did like, oh, we have to have the connection thing. I'm like, that's how they're gonna make sure that he
One
doesn't. But
one
they
thing
did a
that I
great job.
saw before I saw the movie, this didn't come from people who had seen the movie, but they were like, they can't kill him again. That would be stepping on the movie Logan if they killed him again.
That's true.
He will have to stay alive
Yep.
because that would be the way to very cleanly not step on that legacy.
That's true. And I think there is something that like Hugh Jackman famously did say, like was it like a few months after Logan came out and he was ready to say goodbye to it, that like the MCU bought like Disney, and he was like, God damn it.
Mhm.
So now I'm like, I'm so glad they didn't kill him off. I'm so glad that they have X-23 in that whole thing too, and just like the idea of like, yeah, he's in the suit, great, that's fun. And
Yeah.
the helmet reveal of the thing
Uh,
could have done
this guy,
without that, to be
this
honest.
creator, Koi Genre, said like if you watch the movie, you can see the hood
Yeah.
throughout, but they've just very skillfully shot around it. Because I was like, wait,
Mhm.
where'd that come from? But apparently, you can see that there is one there. I
Sure.
think I think it was important to do.
Yeah.
It was a main issue I had with Logan, and I understand I'm in the very very small minority there of like, if we're saying goodbye to this character and you never put him in the suit, and my fix was just put him in the X-24 thing, like
Mhm.
have it be that poetic thing of the real Wolverine killing the image of what people thought they want to see, but like to have him never put on the suit is silly. Like
Yes.
this isn't the Wolverine doing it. It's a Wolverine doing it.
Mhm.
There, you got what you wanted out of this.
Mhm.
Again, paying off what they were promoting, which is,
Mhm.
hey, it's going to be Deadpool and Wolverine the right way working together, not the Wolverine Origins way.
Mhm. Mhm. Because I remember famously when they released the first trailer, the first teaser, and like his sleeves are on. I'm like, oh man, they got to find a way to take the sleeves off. And you were like, I don't think they're gonna do that because of his skin cancer risk and all that kind of stuff. I'm like,
No,
okay,
that
fine.
is not what I said. I said
No?
I don't think that that's going to be a permanent thing, and that
Oh, I
they
see.
would have started that way because of
Mhm.
his skin thing. That
Right, right, right.
that I wouldn't hold on to that. I already knew that they were taking the sleeves off, and I didn't want to ruin that for you. But what I was saying was,
Mm,
I understand why they would start there.
yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it is weird to watch him just walking around with like, oh, you just don't have sleeves all the time. That's all
Yeah.
right. But like the fact that it's built into this, it's really really good. The helmet thing is just like to me, um, it was cool. It was a cool moment, but I'm like at the same time seeing it fully on, I'm like, I get why they kind of wanted to avoid that at that
At
time.
that time, but
Um,
that's why I like that Deadpool said like it's
yeah.
like, yeah, like finally we've got one with a suit after 20 years, almost like they were embarrassed to be part of a superhero thing,
Yeah.
which is what Logan felt like to me, that it was
Yes.
embarrassed of the superhero-ness of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, doesn't make it a bad movie. It's just, if we're talking about comic book movies, again, who are these things for? Then it
Yes.
does feel a bit off.
Yeah, and it feels off because it's like, oh, you're making a big deal that this is the last time, so we're constantly never going to see that image except for that deleted like
Yeah,
Easter egg thing,
and I feel
the
like even
deleted
that
post
gets
credit
paid
scene.
off by them doing the brown suit in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like it is a movie that was very upfront about what it wanted to do. It wasn't upfront about who
Hmm.
was going to be in it, and that's nice
Hmm.
for people to have surprises. But it was
Yeah.
upfront about what it wanted to accomplish and who it was for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's like you said, it's very successful and it does accomplish all those things because it stays very much self-contained in its lane and it's not trying to do anything else. It just
Yeah, like it
it's a
didn't
very
go
much
into um Avengers. It didn't like it's
yeah.
like this is a Deadpool story. Like
Yep.
I know some people were kind of worried when they saw the sling rings. Like, what are they gonna do? In the context of the movie, it's very clear. Like, yeah, they're gonna go home now. Got it. That's how they
Yeah.
get home. I wasn't like, oh no, what are they gonna do next?
Yeah. And I did like the fact that the sling ring had the Infinity Stones into it, but at this point in time with the MCU, it's like, yeah, that's old news.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just normalized now. I'm like, cool, that's awesome.
Mhm.
That works really, really well. Because it's not like those stones ever factored into making that a more powerful device or anything
Right.
like that. It was just it's still fundamentally a sling ring.
Yeah.
That's it. I really, really like that. That was really cool. And with all the void being what it currently is, I'm just like, this is it's just a great aesthetic that it's just
Hmm.
got all these different things. And like I my theater just like went wild when they saw the CN Tower there. I'm like, yeah,
Mine
that's
too. And
that's
it did make me be like, is it the CN Tower in every print of this movie or just
yeah.
our print?
I'm I hope it's in every print of this movie. I
So
like
do
the
I.
fact that they got to do the premiere at Scotiabank downtown.
Yeah, that's where I saw it. I wasn't there for the premiere, but
That would
that's
have
where I
been
saw it. And
cool.
literally, there was no other poster or any. Every single surface, and I mean that, like if you're in the
Yes.
bathroom, the mirrors, every single surface of
Everything.
that thing was Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, yeah, everything. A friend of mine was at that premiere and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, if there's an argument to be made about me doing cosplay, this would be the argument to be
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, get good enough at cosplay so that you would get invited to this kind of stuff because you show up in costume. But I'm not doing it. I'm not
Nope.
doing cosplay. Not at this stage of my life. It would have been something that I'd have to start like 10 years ago and then still do now. But
Yeah.
to get into it now is just like, no, what do you don't, no, you don't have time or the skills to be able to do that. I respect everyone that does cosplay. I think it's great. I
Yeah.
think it's
I
really,
love
really
I love
cool.
seeing people show off what they put like
Yeah.
time
And their
into.
their love for the characters. But for me personally, I'm like, costume design has never been my thing. I'm not going to start doing that now.
Well,
But if there was an argument to be like, hey, Ben, if you were to make a Deadpool cosplay and it would allow you to get invited to this, would you do it? I'm like, absolutely yes.
oh,
I would
100%.
100% yes.
Yeah.
That'd be so much fun. Um, but yeah.
All right. Well, let's rate this movie.
Hmm.
I'm gonna give it an 8.5, like a real strong 8.5.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's an 8.5 to me. It couldn't have broken 9. And it's the realization that the cameos are not actually cameos, they're built into the actual story that I'm like, it makes this movie so much stronger. And the fact that we saw Chris Evans, uh,
Great.
that was the biggest thing to me. And the just not only Chris Evans, but that post-credit scene
Yeah.
alone,
So
that
funny.
rant,
It's his rant
so
is
damn good.
hilarious.
So good. So good. Oh man, it's an 8.5 for me. There are, like you said, there are clear problems with this movie. But it accomplishes everything it said it's gonna. And for the people like that critic that hates on superhero movies, grow up.
I mean I do think that it's sadder to have someone who doesn't necessarily have to talk about this stuff
Mhm,
um constantly bring it up, even if
mhm.
they're talking about something that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Like
That's genuinely
that's
like,
the
I
part where
think
you're
you
like, grow up.
need to grow up and get some therapy and really deal with your
Yeah.
issues right now and stop making this everyone else's problem.
Yeah.
Deadpool grew up in this movie.
Yeah.
You need to too.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We're part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Gay Movies, Country Soon Pod, and Springfield Googleplex. Please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, and more shows. If you want to hear older episodes, well, you're in luck. You can go to any podcast platform of your choice, rate, review, subscribe, follow, share with your friends. You can also go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten and get older episodes. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at TDF Spoiled. And our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So please get in touch however you like. Let us know what you think. And sorry for that seemingly like 20-minute rant about film criticism, but
No,
it's
it's a
only
valid
making
one.
me more annoyed and more annoyed
No,
as the
it's
years
valid.
go on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
valid at this point.
Anyway, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.